It started with a message, simple, desperate, and haunting. There's an animal trapped. It's been years. Please, someone help her before it's too late. The words lingered in my mind, heavier than anything I'd read before. 10 years. The thought of a living being enduring that kind of isolation, locked in a cage with no hope, surrounded by waste. It was almost too much to process. We didn't know the full story yet, but what little we'd heard was enough to set everything in motion. Grabbing our gear, we barely exchanged words. There was no need. Each of us felt the same urgency, the same pull to act. As we loaded the vehicle and mapped the route, the weight of the unknown settled in. Was she even still alive? And if she was, what kind of life had been left for her after so much time in darkness? The drive was silent, each of us lost in our thoughts. My mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. I imagined her frightened, broken, and so used to neglect that she might not even understand the first touch of kindness. We were heading into the unknown, but one thing was clear. No matter what we found, we were going to do everything in our power to bring her back to the life she deserved. The road grew rougher as we drove further away from the city, the trees growing thicker and the air feeling heavier with each passing mile. The quiet hum of the engine was the only sound as we made our way through the winding path, the weight of what we were about to face pressing down on us. Every bump in the road felt like a jolt, a reminder that time was ticking and we didn't know how much she had left. As the location drew closer, I glanced at the others in the vehicle. Their faces were set in quiet determination, but behind their eyes, you could see the same mix of fear and hope that I felt. What if we were too late? The car came to a halt at the edge of an overgrown dirt road, the headlights casting long, eerie shadows across the dense brush ahead. "This is as far as we can go by car," someone said quietly. We stepped out into the stillness of the night, the sound of our boots crunching against gravel breaking the silence. The air was damp and cool, carrying with it the faint smell of decay and something unplaceable, something that felt heavy with neglect. Flashlights flickered on, cutting through the darkness as we made our way on foot toward the structure described in the message. The path was narrow, tangled with roots and branches that clawed at our legs as we pushed forward. Every step seemed to echo in the quiet, amplifying the unease that clung to us. Then, through the trees, we saw it. A small, crumbling shed, barely visible in the moonlight. It looked like it hadn't been touched in decades, leaning to one side as if the earth itself wanted to swallow it whole. Someone whispered, "This must be it." We approached cautiously, the smell growing stronger, a nauseating mix of filth and abandonment. The door was barely hanging on its hinges, and as one of us pushed it open, it creaked loudly, the sound cutting through the oppressive silence. For a moment, none of us moved, our flashlights scanning the interior. The beam of light landed on a corner of the shed, and there she was. A small, lifeless figure, hunched in the darkness, barely more than a shadow. Her cage was rusted, the bars warped and broken in places, but still holding her prisoner. She didn't move, but her eyes told us everything. They were wide and pleading, a silent cry for help that hit us harder than any words ever could. That was the moment we knew. This wasn't just a rescue. It was a fight to save what was left of her. For a moment, time seemed to stop. We stood there, frozen, staring at the fragile figure in the cage. The air inside the shed was thick, suffocating, and every breath felt heavy with the weight of her suffering. She was so small, so fragile, huddled in the corner like she was trying to disappear into the shadows. Her fur was matted and caked with filth, her body thin to the point of being skeletal, but it was her eyes that broke us. They were wide, glassy, and filled with a desperation so profound it was impossible to look away. They begged us to help her, to end the nightmare she'd been living for years. We moved closer, slowly, carefully, not wanting to startle her. Her body flinched with every sound, every small movement we made, as if she was bracing herself for something awful. "It's okay," someone whispered, their voice trembling. We're here to help you." But she didn't understand. How could she? For 10 years, no one had been there for her. No one had shown her kindness. To her, we were just another threat in a world that had already taken so much from her. The cage was rusted shut, the latch barely functional from years of neglect. As one of us worked to pry it open, the rest of us tried to reassure her, speaking softly, trying to let her know she was safe now. Her body trembled violently, her eyes darting between us and the open door, unsure whether to trust the strange figures reaching for her. Finally, with a groan of metal, the cage door swung open, and for the first time in a decade, she wasn't trapped anymore. We offered her water, holding the bowl just close enough for her to see it. She hesitated, her frail body shaking, before inching forward and lapping it up with frantic desperation. It was clear she hadn't had clean water in days, maybe longer. Her ribs pressed against her thin skin with every movement, and every small gulp she took made her look more fragile, more heartbreaking. When it came time to lift her out of the cage, she resisted, letting out a weak, pitiful whimper that tore through the silence like a cry for help. But as soon as we touched her, gently wrapping her in a soft blanket, her resistance faded. It was as if she realized for the first time that someone was there to care for her. Her trembling slowed, her body sinking into the blanket as if it was the first comfort she'd ever known. As we carried her out of that shed, the stench of filth and decay still clinging to her, we made her a promise. "You're safe now," one of us said softly, the words catching in their throat. "No one will ever hurt you again." She didn't respond, of course. She couldn't. But her desperate eyes, once filled with fear, softened ever so slightly. And in that moment, we knew she understood. Her nightmare was over. The ride to the clinic was silent, except for the soft rustle of the blanket as she shifted slightly in my arms. Her frail body was so light it felt as if I were holding nothing at all. Yet the weight of her suffering was unbearable. She was too weak to struggle, too tired to resist. But every so often, she'd lift her head just enough to look at us with those same pleading eyes. It was as if she couldn't quite believe what was happening. Freedom, after all this time. When we arrived, the vet team was already waiting, their faces a mixture of concern and determination. They moved quickly but gently, carefully unwrapping her and laying her on the examination table. Under the bright clinic lights, the extent of her condition became painfully clear. Her fur, once likely soft and full, was matted into thick clumps, pulling painfully at her delicate skin. Open sores covered her body, signs of years spent lying on filth with no escape. Every rib, every bone was visible beneath her thin, stretched skin, a silent testament to years of starvation and neglect. The vet worked methodically, speaking softly as they examined her, but the gravity of their words hit us hard. Severe malnutrition, dehydration, skin infections, and she's anemic, one of them said, their voice tinged with a mix of anger and sadness. She's been through hell. They began cleaning her wounds, cutting away the filthy mats of fur and bathing her in warm water. At first, she flinched at every touch, her body tensing as if she expected pain. But slowly, as the gentle hands continued their work, she began to relax. We watched as years of dirt and grime washed away, revealing a body that had been so badly neglected, it was a miracle she had survived at all. Someone brought over a bowl of soft food, and we held our breath as she sniffed it cautiously before taking a tentative bite. The look in her eyes as she ate was unforgettable, cautious, almost disbelieving, as if she couldn't quite trust that this kindness was real. As the hours passed, her transformation began, not just physically, but emotionally. She started leaning slightly into the hands that touched her, her eyes blinking slowly, her body no longer trembling with fear. It wasn't much. It wasn't enough to erase 10 years of suffering. But it was a start, one small step toward healing. Before we left the clinic that night, the vet spoke quietly to us. "She's not out of the woods yet," they said, their expression serious. Her body has been pushed to its limits, and the road to recovery will be long, but she's a fighter. We nodded, our resolve strengthened. No matter how long it took, no matter how hard the journey ahead might be, we knew we'd do everything in our power to help her heal. Because for the first time in her life, she had people who cared, people who wouldn't let her down. The first days of her recovery were the hardest. She was so weak that even standing seemed impossible. We watched as she tried to lift herself, her frail legs trembling under the weight of her own body. Every time she collapsed back onto the soft bedding, it was like watching her spirit fight a battle her body wasn't ready for. But she didn't give up. With each small attempt, she grew a little stronger, a little more determined. Her appetite slowly returned, though at first she could only manage a few bites of food at a time. We prepared small, nutritious meals for her, sitting beside her as she ate. Each bite felt like a tiny victory, a step away from the years of starvation she had endured. Water was another hurdle. Her body was so dehydrated that she drank cautiously, as though she didn't believe there would be more if she needed it. Over time, her trust grew, and she began to drink freely, her eyes losing some of their desperation. The sores on her body began to heal, thanks to the gentle care of the vet and daily treatments to soothe her skin. We applied ointments, wrapped her wounds, and whispered words of encouragement as we worked. It wasn't just about healing her physically, it was about letting her know she wasn't alone anymore. Every touch, every gentle word was a reminder that she was safe now, that the nightmare was over. Her first steps outside were unforgettable. It was a sunny afternoon, the kind of day that felt like a promise of better things to come. We carried her carefully to the yard, placing her on the soft grass. At first, she just lay there, her nose twitching as she sniffed the fresh air. Then, slowly, she pushed herself up, her legs wobbling but holding. She took a hesitant step, then another, her eyes wide with wonder. It was as if she was discovering the world for the first time. With each passing day, she grew stronger. Her once hollow frame began to fill out. Her fur, though still patchy, started to regain a soft sheen. She began to wag her tail, a small but profound sign of joy. She'd nuzzle into our hands, lean into our touch, and follow us with her eyes as if to say, "Thank you." It was a transformation we had hoped for, but never dared to expect so soon. But the most incredible moment came when she began to trust fully. One evening, as the sun set, she curled up next to me, resting her head on my lap for the first time. Her breathing was steady, her body relaxed, and for the first time since we rescued her, she seemed truly at peace. That moment reminded us why we do this, to give animals like her a second chance at the life they deserve. She was no longer the lifeless creature we'd found in that cage. She was alive, healing, and finally, beginning to believe in a world where love and kindness could exist. As the weeks turned into months, the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. She was no longer the fragile, trembling soul we had pulled from that cage. Her once hollow eyes now sparkled with curiosity, and her movements, once hesitant and weak, became confident and strong. Every day she surprised us with something new, a wag of her tail, a playful bounce, or the way she'd nuzzle into our hands, seeking affection. It was as though she was rediscovering herself, one small piece at a time. Her personality began to shine through in ways we never imagined. She had a quiet, gentle nature, but also a spark of mischief that made us laugh. We'd find her exploring corners of the yard, sniffing at flowers, or chasing the occasional butterfly. She loved the sun, often lying on her back in the grass with her paws in the air, soaking in the warmth she'd been deprived of for so long. It was these small moments, these glimpses of pure joy, that reminded us how far she'd come. Bonding with her felt like a gift. She would follow us around, her soft eyes always watching, always trusting. At night, she'd curl up close, her breathing steady, her body finally at ease. It was in those quiet moments that the magnitude of her recovery truly sank in. This was the same animal who had spent a decade in darkness, forgotten, and alone. And now she was loved, cherished, and free. But her journey wasn't just about healing. It was about teaching us, too. She showed us what resilience looks like, what it means to fight through unimaginable pain and still find the courage to trust again. Her ability to forgive, to open her heart to love after everything she'd endured, was nothing short of extraordinary. The day we found her feels like a lifetime ago now, but it's a memory that will never leave us. We often think back to that moment when we first saw her, lifeless and broken in that cage. And then we look at her now, running, playing, living, and it's hard to believe she's the same being. Her story is one of hope, of strength, and of the incredible power of love. As we look ahead, we know her journey isn't over. There will always be challenges, remnants of the past that might resurface, but she'll never face them alone. She's part of our family now, and we've made a promise, to her and to every animal like her, that we'll keep fighting, keep rescuing, and keep believing in second chances. To everyone watching this, we want you to know that your support made this possible. You were with us every step of the way, and together, we gave her the life she always deserved. Thank you for being a part of her journey and for showing the world that even in the darkest moments, hope can shine through. Her story doesn't end here. It's just the beginning. Every step of her journey, from the moment we found her to the life she's living now, has been a testament to resilience, compassion, and the transformative power of love. Looking at her today, it's hard to believe she's the same animal we found locked away, forgotten for a decade. She's thriving, discovering the joys of life that she never knew existed, running through open fields, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face, and experiencing the simple, pure happiness of being loved. But her story isn't just hers. It's a call to action. There are so many others out there, still waiting, still suffering in silence. Her transformation is proof of what's possible when we refuse to turn away, when we choose to act, to care, and to give our time, resources, and hearts to those who need us most. She is a reminder that even the smallest act of kindness can change a life forever. To everyone who's watched her journey, shared her story, and supported her recovery, you've been a part of this miracle. It's because of you that she has this second chance, and it's because of your compassion that stories like hers don't have to end in tragedy. Together, we've shown that every life matters, that no one is too broken to be saved, and that love truly can heal. We'll continue this work, for her and for every animal still waiting for their rescue, and we invite you to join us, whether it's through sharing stories like hers, volunteering your time, or simply spreading awareness. Every action makes a difference. Let's keep fighting for them. Let's keep believing in their potential to heal. And let's keep showing the world what love can do. As she lies here now, her head resting on my lap, her soft breaths steady and calm, I'm reminded of why we started this journey in the first place. It's for her and for all the others like her who deserve to be seen, to be saved, and to be loved. Her eyes, once filled with fear and desperation, now hold peace, a peace that wouldn't have been possible without this incredible community. Thank you for being a part of this story, for standing with us, and for showing her that her life mattered. Together, we can continue to create stories of hope, one rescue at a time. And as we say goodnight to her now, curled up in the warmth of her new life, we're reminded that this isn't the end. It's the beginning of a brighter future, one we can build together. As we look back on this journey, it's hard to put into words the emotions we've felt. The joy of seeing her take her first steps into a new world, the heartbreak of witnessing the scars of her past, and the overwhelming sense of hope as we watched her heal. But through it all, one thing stands clear. Love makes the impossible possible. Every time she looks up at us with those trusting eyes, every time she curls up contentedly by our side, we are reminded that we didn't just save her, we gave her back the life she was always meant to have. We gave her the chance to be a dog again, to experience the world with wonder and curiosity, and to know that she's not alone anymore. Her healing wasn't just about physical recovery, it was about restoring her spirit, her belief in kindness, and her ability to trust again. But her story is far from unique. There are so many other animals out there, still waiting for someone to care, someone to give them the chance to heal. We have seen firsthand how love, patience, and persistence can transform a life. It's not just about rescuing, it's about healing, physically, emotionally, and mentally. It's about showing them that despite the pain they've known, there is a future full of love and security waiting for them. We want to thank you, the community, for standing with us through every step of this journey. Your support has meant the world, not just to us, but to her. She's living proof of what can happen when we come together for a cause bigger than ourselves. She is living proof that even after the darkest of times, there's light, there's hope, and there's a future worth fighting for. But this isn't just a one-time story. It's an ongoing mission. There are so many more animals out there who need our help. And with your continued support, we can make a difference. We can continue to provide them with the care, love, and opportunities they deserve. Every rescue, every step forward, every moment of healing counts. And together, we can give them the second chances they've been waiting for. As we continue to watch her grow and thrive, we're reminded of the importance of what we do. She's more than just a rescue. She's a reminder that no matter the odds, no matter the pain, every life is worth fighting for. Thank you for being part of this journey, for believing in the power of love, and for helping to make this transformation possible. We'll keep fighting, we'll keep rescuing, and we'll keep believing in the change we can create together. This is just the beginning, and we're so grateful to have you with us every step of the way.